legendary car driver, right? Is that how you would describe yourself? A professional car driver?
Race car driver.
Race car
Yes,
driver.
and
Okay.
sort of morphed into kind of a journalist these days, but it's always high performance, track times, lap records, and I still race a lot.
And you
Love
right.
it. I'm a car guy to the core, all about driving.
Yeah. So for me, you came in my radar because I'm a huge fan of the Motor Trend roadkill guys. Right. I just love the idea of those of getting some old junky car and giving it some new life and building some outrageous projects. But for those guys, every time they need some real talent behind the wheel, then they call you, right? And then there you are driving their junky cars around laps or doing whatever to get times in.
I
So it
love
turns out that's a tiny part of what you do. You go to all the races. You've done a bunch of stuff. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into this and how long you've been doing it for?
Well, I stumbled on an ad in a shopping newspaper in 1977,
Oh wow!
and it said, "Race your own car, $5." Well, I'd always loved going around corners, and I had a really cool car. I had a Datsun 510 two-door, and I bought it because I liked the wheels. It was lowered, and back in my high school, nobody was lowering cars; they were jacking them up.
Ah,
Putting 50 series fat tires on the back. But I was always a sporty car guy, and that ad was for an autocross. So that was my introduction to legal competition. Autocross, and that's racing in a parking lot around a small course set up with pylons and traffic cones. It's like slalom skiing with your car. And I
okay.
loved it. I was pretty good at it. And that led to I went to college, I got a degree in accounting, blah, blah. But my first real job was putting on an autocross. It was a Dodge program to do an autocross at college campuses. I saved all my money for about 2 years, bought a little race car for a little road racing series, Volkswagen Cup, and I was on my way. And I just stayed at it. I had a side career to actually make a little money. I was doing sales training for manufacturers. That got me a lot of good introductions, and we would set up little autocrosses for the salespeople to try out the latest model. And they were usually high performance because they were driving events, BMWs, etc. And my career was building. I finally got some factory rides, and that was the high point of my career as I drove for the factory, Porsche, Audi, Mazda, Volvo, and then Mazda again, all the way up well into my 50s.
Wow.
And won, almost 100 pro races, 10 championships. And so I got around. In the meantime, I always did little special side projects. And as my racing slowed down, I got involved with Motor Trend magazine. I became their track tester, writer, video host. It has been fantastic. It's just been great. I've set a lot of lap records through Motor Trend, usually in brand new, whatever it is, fantastic cars.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of us know you because that's gives you a lot of exposure when you're on TV on shows, right? Because they have a ton of content they're creating digitally now. It used to be on YouTube, but now they have their own channel, right?
Yes,
Is that
the
what it is?
Motor Trend on demand.
Motor Trend on Demand. There you
Sign
go.
up and see every single show ever made. The roadkill
Yeah.
guys are there. Mike
Yes.
Finnegan has got his own show now, Faster with Finnegan. I've been on that show a couple of times with a
Yeah.
very scary V8 powered Chevy S10 pickup.
Oh yes.
And we make it better and better, and he does, and it's a good time.
Yeah,
Motor
Freiberger
Trend,
always goes for the junky cars, and he Finnegan goes for the high performance, almost right. Like that's how that
yeah,
works.
well, he started with an S10 he found on Craigslist.
Yes, those shows are very very entertaining. For some reason, we just love people being creative when it comes to using old cars, and I love old classic cars, right? And like them, there's so many of us that do
I'm
that,
the same
and
way.
yeah, and so I mean, you always see a performance, but we're appreciating performance, right? Like my background, I wasn't a car guy, but I wanted to have an electric car, something that was new and innovative or whatever. But back in the day when I wanted one, Tesla wasn't around, and so there's no electric cars. The only way to do one was to make my own. And so I went that route, and I went down that rabbit hole. And here we are, almost 10 years later. I'm doing this, several of these cars, and I want to build a fleet, the whole thing, right? But now I'm talking to people that are, kind of interested in the same thing. Now electrics have become real. Like that,
Yes.
going down the street in my neighborhood, I'm not the only crazy one with a Tesla or with a electric. There's like all my neighbors have them. You're like, what? This is crazy. Like how do we get here? So
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see someone like you behind an electric, right? Because you recently just did a race. Why don't you talk a little bit about that race behind an electric car?
Well, in my work with Motor Trend, I first got introduced to Tesla. We had a Model S, and the technical director, Kim Reynolds, was driving it around years ago when they were new.
When they were new.
And he came out to one of our track days in this Tesla, and I knew very little about it. For me, electric cars had always been weird, right?
Yeah.
They were on the fringes, and
Yeah.
even if they worked, they were really strange. They usually look like some sort of eggy thing, or
Yes.
well, the Tesla rolls up, and I look at a Model S, and I think, well, that's a nice looking car. And I went over and I got in it, and I mean, just that first impression of opening the door and getting in, like you just said, this car was real. This wasn't strange. And I just took it for a little ride around the parking lot out of curiosity. And I was so impressed immediately with just driving it up and down, how smooth and quiet, and the quality of the car, and the forward think of the big screens, information screen in the center of the dash, and so impressed. So eventually, well, I got to track one, and it handled great. But guess what? You couldn't run a Model S flat out for very long at all. It would cut down its power, I think, because it was overheating.
Overheating. Yeah.
As you probably know, when you flow a lot of electrons, you generate a lot of heat.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so then the Model 3 came out a couple of years later, and we were going to track test that. And it did not have as much of an overheating issue on track. You could go, but it had other issues. The stability control was incredibly intervened a lot, and
It was
the
aggressive.
brakes were not happy at track speeds. So then Tesla started working on a track mode. Being this small company, they can react so quickly. And so I had actually told them when I tested it, the car was so downright scary in a racing situation, mind you. They weren't built for that. They were built for street driving. And now I'm going flat out at Willow Springs over some big bumps. The brakes just flat did not work, and sent me across the desert at 80 miles an hour. And thank goodness there was no walls, no big rocks. I went all the way across the infield of the track and rejoined on the other side, and got out and said, I'm done. This car, I mean, that could have been bad. But guess what? The Tesla people called me just a month or so later and asked me to come help them set up track mode version 1.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and they had done a lot of work. The car was already much better in a track environment. The brakes worked far better. The handling, they allowed the car to go fast through a corner without the stability control coming in and just clamping it down. And it was fascinating to work with these guys. The chief guy was Lars, and I can't remember his last name. And then there was a young engineer there. And as far as I know, that was the chassis department, those two guys.
Wow.
And we would go out in the car, and the young engineer would be riding with me with a laptop. And I said, well, we're gonna rip around the corners. He goes, I got this, don't you worry. And sure enough, he did. He could hang on to that laptop with his legs. And I'd be talking to him about how the car was handling, and he would be adjusting on the computer, typing, while we're driving around the track.
Wow. Okay.
It was like an episode of the from an early Fast and Furious movie.
Yeah.
Remember that scene where he's halfway through a drag race and he's typing into his um, laptop to adjust the car. Well, that's what it was like. And one of the things we were adjusting, this Model 3 was a dual motor, and he could adjust how much each motor would, how much power to distribute and how much regeneration to distribute. While we were driving, he could do that. And in fact, on the new ones, you can do that now. You can adjust that. I think you can even do it while you're driving. I think I did that when I've been on track with the cars. So they made a huge step forward. And then a little bit later, maybe, I don't know, a year later or so, they had a track mode .2 that was even better. And my involvement in all this track mode and everything got me this little connection in the Tesla world, which led me to these guys, Unplugged Performance, who are like high performance Tesla people, aftermarket. They're not part of Tesla, but they're friendly and they do suspension work and everything. And that's how I got involved with them. And I actually went to a track day for Teslas only. They call it Tesla Corsa. And
Tesla Corsa.
yeah, it was amazing.
Where's that one at?
That was at Buttonwillow,
Buttonwillow.
which
Okay.
is in Central California. And then we had one at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, which is
Laguna
up
Seca?
in Monterey.
Yeah.
And they've had at least 6 of them so far. It's pretty amazing to see 30 or 40 or 50 Teslas all running around the racetrack. And of course, it's quiet.
Yes. I've been to one of those events at Laguna Seca, and
Oh,
it
super.
wasn't completely quiet. It was just because there was other cars there during that day, but while it's on the track, it's just you just hear the cars go by. It's pretty
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
It's almost like you can't tell how fast they're going because you don't hear the roar. You just hear the
Yes.
tires screeching and stuff, and you're like, oh, are they going really that fast? But they are. I mean, they're going down the street on
Yeah.
straightaways. They're hitting 100 or whatever. So yeah. So
Yes.
so then, how does that turn into you racing for on this also legendary ride, one of the oldest races in the country,
In the
which is
world.
Pikes Peak in the world? Yeah, Pikes Peak.
Yes. It's the second oldest continuous race on Earth. And I
Wow.
think Le Mans is the oldest.
Oh wow.
Or maybe the Indy 500. They're all real close to 100 years old.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy.
the Pikes Peak Hill Climb is one car at a time. You run for a time. And I've done it several times over the years. It's an incredible challenge because of being on the top of a mountain. Starts at 9,000 feet of altitude and goes to 14,000 feet. So for one thing, you never get to test a race car at that kind of altitude. And it's
Yeah.
very difficult for gasoline engines because they need air.
They
And the
need
air is
oxygen,
very,
right?
very thin.
Yeah, they need oxygen, and the oxygen is. So wait a minute. So do you? Well, that means you're going up like 4,000 feet in like a span of like 10 minutes or 12 minutes or something.
Yes,
Do you,
5,000 feet
Five
vertical.
thousand feet. So do you feel that? Like, do you feel lightheaded
Oh,
when you end
yeah.
up? Oh wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, in fact, now I wear oxygen.
Ah, okay. So that's why you had oxygen. Okay, I saw that and I thought, like, why is he? It's weird. I'm like, what's the oxygen thing? I thought it was for like shifting. I know that some cars use some kind of shifter mechanism that they use compressed
Yes,
air or
yes, a
something,
lot.
right?
Yeah, air
Yeah,
shifters.
yeah.
Yeah, but if you saw the video of the race car, Tesla race car, there's a big tank next to me that is actually CO2, and that is sprayed on the coolers to help
That's
cool
to
the
keep
car.
it cool. Okay, that's
Yeah,
what that is
because
for.
think about it, when you're that high, there's not much air, right? Well, the radiators and all are air cooled. Air goes through the radiator. Well, there's not as much air.
Yeah,
So cars don't cool as well as they do down at sea level where the air is thicker.
yeah.
So that's another big issue. And my connection was through Unplugged Performance. We were on a podcast. I'd already done 2 Tesla Corsa days with them. I met the owner, Ben Schaefer, who's a brilliant guy who is and was a big deal in the gasoline power world with Bulletproof. That was his company. And they made Nissan GTRs primarily that made 2,000 horsepower and would go 250 miles an hour in a half-mile drag race, like crazy cars. Well, Ben himself got interested in the electric car world. He saw the potential because I'm sure everybody on your podcast is probably aware of the incredible power possible from electricity in a car. Yeah. These cars are fast.
They're torquey.
Tesla Model S, what?
They're torquey, right?
Torquey. Nothing beats an electric car off the line.
Yeah.
Just forget about it. I just heard a line by my friend Jason Camissa, who's another automotive journalist. And he said, oh yeah, you can make all your noise with your launch mode and the engine going, but the whole time the electric car is sitting next to you, silently waiting to murder you in the drag race. Because guess what? The fastest car that we have ever tested at Motor Trend, or I should say maybe the quickest, 0 to 60 and in the quarter mile, Tesla electric.
Wow.
The Model S in ludicrous mode. It beats every Lamborghini, Hellcat, Charger, Boss Mustang, Ferrari. It beats every single car we've ever tested. Isn't that incredible? Who would think, unless you have experience with electric, how powerful it can be, and yet silent at the same time, and easy, really. If you don't believe, just drive or ride in a Tesla and get ready.
Yeah, even me, right? I've been driving for now almost 10 years electric, right? And my little system is small. It's nothing crazy, right? I don't know how to drive, so I'd probably kill myself if I had some real power behind the wheel. But I got a chance to do a track lap with Blake on his Tesla Model S. Oh my God! I mean, like, this is amazing. That's the best way to experience the power, right? Because here's the thing: like, you don't freak out because you have someone capable behind the wheel, right? And this guy's probably not gonna crash because he doesn't want to die. He doesn't. Crashing is not fun, right? So, right. But he, that he knows where the limits of the car is, so then he's gonna give it full, or at least closer than because I've been in a car like that, even on a NASCAR track where like it didn't feel the same, right? And then I got in a car with a NASCAR driver behind, right, the wheel, and it's like, oh my God, it's like 10 times crazier because he takes those turns at full speed, and so it's the same thing with this. And I was so blown away at the Tesla. I mean, I'd been in a Tesla and did the launching at ludicrous mode, the whole thing, right? Yeah. But it's nothing compared to me behind the wheel being scared and, like my brain telling me that you're gonna die. you're basically So that's the only way to enjoy the feeling that you're gonna die is behind the wheel with someone that knows what they're doing, like a professional car driver. And I don't think a lot of people experience that. Like, we all know that Teslas are powerful, but I don't think we know how powerful, right? Like you guys are experiencing out there in the tracks and stuff. And so, it's
not just powerful, Yehu, but the Teslas they handle really well. And Unplugged makes them even better. But the batteries, and they have a lot of them, right? They have a lot of battery capacity. There's a lot of weight in the batteries, but it's all carried in and below the floor. It's very, very low. And this makes the cars handle far better than anything else that weighs that much. It's a real advantage. Plus, Tesla has done a great job with the fundamental design of making these cars drive well. I mean, I've been very impressed. And then Unplugged just takes it to the next level. It's kind of like AMG with Mercedes or M Division at BMW. Yeah. That's what Tesla is with Tesla cars, even though they're not part of Tesla. But they make suspension and body kits, and we run all of that at Pikes Peak. And that's how I got in. Was Ben and I were on a podcast with a podcast called Third Row Tesla. And we're talking about electric cars and everything. And Tesla had just been to the Nürburgring with a Model S super fast that they called it the Plaid.
The
And
flood, yeah.
I love that. That's Elon Musk and Tesla's sense of humor. It's from the movie Spaceballs,
Yeah.
where when the spaceship goes into the ultra fast mode,
The
like in
ludicrous mode. And then the next one was flat, yeah.
ludicrous, and then it goes plaid. And that reminds me, like in Star Trek, they'd always have warp factor 5. And if you go beyond that, everything goes as a blur.
Yeah.
Called a plaid. And they still operate the greatest road racetrack on earth. And well, Tesla is in California, and Ben is pretty friendly. And I said, Ben, hey, and run it at Pikes Peak, right? It would be great. And he said, well, he says, I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's going to happen just yet. But he said, you know what? Maybe we will build a car. And sure enough,
They build a car.
the race was only 3 or 4 months away. The Ben Schaefer and Unplugged built a Model 3 ground up to go race at Pikes Peak. Put all their suspension on it. The drivetrain was stock because that's very difficult to modify. You kind of need to be Tesla if you want to mess with any of that stuff.
Yeah. Or yeah, some high level
Shoot,
technical.
it's still fast,
Yeah.
and it's all-wheel drive. Right, and that the electric Tesla is well suited to Pikes Peak. It's electric, so it doesn't need air, and it is all-wheel drive, and the electric engine or motor. No motor. I got that.
Motor.
The electric motor has great bottom end, great torque. So Pikes Peak Hill Climb has a lot of mountain switchbacks, tight corners, and like we said, we climb vertically a mile. It's a 12.5 mile run, vertically a mile. So it is a hill climb, and the torque, it really rewards a good time at Pikes Peak.
Yeah. So you're not hitting like super fast speeds there, right? What is the top? Is there straightaways on it, or
There
well, so
are
they
straight
some.
sections. There's 3. Some of them are curvy, but they're straight enough.
Okay,
We're
straight
getting
up.
maybe 125 miles an
Oh
hour.
wow. Okay, so yeah, you're hitting over 100, but most of the time it's just hairpin turns, right? Like
It's
we're
everything. Yes,
yeah.
most of it is corners. It's a very windy. Hey, you're climbing a mountain. It is not a straight road. This is not an interstate, people.
Yeah.
And so it's very windy, and a lot of them are very slow. And then near the top, we kind of run along a ridge from Devil's Playground over to the peak, and it's fast. We're running along a mountain ridge, and there are these huge drop-offs, no guardrail. I mean, you want to talk about adrenaline. Pikes Peak is where I learned that, in fact, I am an adrenaline junkie. Hi, my name is Randy, and I'm an adrenaline junkie because I've never been so pumped as I am when I get done with a run at the summit of Pikes Peak. The thrill. Now, I do it for the thrill and the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks pretty scary. I mean, I've never been up there, but just you get a tiny bit of like an idea of what it is. Sometimes when they put the camera, the GoPro at the right place, you get to see just how blind you are in some of those corners, and you're like, how are you guys going so quick through those things? It's pretty hairy race.
Pretty hairy, and you don't get much practice.
Yeah.
And you never know what the weather's going to be like.
Oh,
And
that's the
road
thing,
is
right?
not
You
a
never
racetrack.
get to practice the entire thing, right? I think they give
No,
you
that's
practice
correct.
days, but it's
We
only a
never get
portion.
to do the whole run. We practice sections.
Yeah.
So there's a couple little corners in between the sections that we never practice.
Wow.
You just go on race day. You're like, okay, maybe, I don't know, like this.
Yeah, that's seems pretty technical. It's a pretty technical
it's
race, right? What? So you guys chose the
Yes,
Model
it is.
3 because it would cool better than the Model S, right? Because you would think the Model S is
Yeah.
a higher performance, bigger car, maybe fancier, more expensive, but it doesn't translate like that to the track, right? Or to to performance.
Right. The Model 3 is better suited to the radical world of a racetrack. Better
I see.
cooling. It's smaller and lighter, and
Lighter.
light is good.
Mhm.
And so it's better suited. The next Model S, actually, the car I can't wait to run, maybe someday, will be the Roadster,
Ah, the
which is not
Roadster.
here yet.
Yeah.
But when I hear the power numbers,
Yeah.
maybe four figures,
Yes.
maybe 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah. It's very
Woo!
easily done because those motors, I mean, he could do that now. Like those motors could do 500 horsepower each, and you could put two of them. He just doesn't because the cars don't need it, right? He's doing a production vehicle, right? I mean, he's made what, like almost 400,000 of those Model 3s or something at this point.
Yeah.
So these are not like race cars. These are street
Right.
cars. My
Right.
wife's driving one, you know.
Yeah.
So so that's what he's focused on. But this technology is so compelling that you can literally do, I mean, no modification essentially to the powertrain, and then go and race up one of the highest performing races in the world, right? Like Pikes Peak.
I'm happy to hear you say that, Yehu, because I'm only very recently have I begun to realize that they could easily make a lot more power.
Oh, they could.
One of the things that happened was the company Lucid. You might have heard of Lucid.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's a new electric car that is going to be a direct competitor to Tesla. In fact, it's a bit of a spin-off. These guys used to work for Tesla.
A lot of the
They
engineers,
went out and they
yes.
started their own company. And I saw the car running at a racetrack, and it is 900 horsepower or more. I mean, the power is crazy. And they went to um, WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, and they beat the record that I had set with
Oh, they
unplugged
beat your record.
performance.
Okay.
Yeah, for I don't know, a year or so, we had the fastest electric car time at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca with an unplugged performance Model 3, the same one I ran at Pikes Peak. No, it wasn't a year. It would have been a matter of months. Well, Lucid went there and they beat us. And guess what? Gosh, it was a week or two later. That's it. Tesla showed up with the Plaid, the latest version, and they beat Lucid. And they had, I mean, the numbers I heard were like 1,200 horsepower or more. I mean, and it was apparently pretty easy to add more power, like you just said. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping maybe we can do that to our Model 3 for this year because you can never have too much power. Bring it.
Bring
Bring
it
it.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's going pretty tame on those because I mean, you think about it. Yeah, he's putting soccer moms in them. So,
Yeah.
you know, you gotta. That's why the stability control I think is so aggressive because there is so much power under the hood of those things that you
Yeah.
need to have a very aggressive thing because we don't know. Like I get behind the thing, I don't know how fast I need to go to a corner. You just go right, and we do stupid
Yeah.
things because we have no idea how to handle in a high performance scenario, right? A car of 6,000 pounds. That's a big. The Model S is a big car, and
Yes.
so when you
Yes.
take a corner, you shift all that weight. We don't know what that is. You guys,
5,000, but yeah,
5,000 pounds. Yeah, so
that's a lot.
it's a lot. Yeah, I mean that's quite a bit of power and weight to be shifting around, and those little tires. I mean they're kind of big tires, but they're street tires at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
That's world
Right.
running. So I think that's where he's focused on, and that's why someone like Unplugged Performance can really open them up, or at least closer to. But I think Tesla themselves could just be like, okay, give it full power, and then now we got something. Of course, they're gonna run into some issues like cooling,
Like
right?
cool.
Those are not designed to go 100 miles an hour for 20 minutes because no one
Yeah.
needs to do that in the freeway, right?
Yes. Right.
So, but that was interesting. So that car that you drove, that Model 3, it was it was pretty. I mean, other than the system, it was pretty modified, right? I mean, it had Lexan uh, glass, right, or Lexan
Windows.
windows, and it
Yes.
had stripped of everything that wasn't completely necessary to run that thing. Um,
as light as possible, full suspension.
full
We didn't do
suspension.
anything to the drivetrain, not a bit. Pure Tesla, dual motor performance model.
Okay.
But springs, shocks, anti-sway bars, bigger wheels,
Bigger wheels.
made by Unplugged Performance, carbon fiber fenders, wide body kit, wing, splitter for aerodynamics, everything we could do outside the drivetrain
And then cooling,
because
extra cooling.
extra cooling, yes, sir. Yes, sir. But it was same power that you have in your Tesla Model 3 performance, if that's the model, what you or your listeners have.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. and,
It's a lot of power.
and the same motors, what would you call it? Gearbox, the drivetrain arrangement was the same.
Yeah.
So we still had that center screen because that's how
Yeah.
you control
I
that.
saw you doing that during the race. You were adjusting stuff.
Yes.
So
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. So you saw our in-car videos. You can see that
yes.
on YouTube, on my channel, Randy Pobst channel on YouTube. The both the big crash and the race that we had afterwards after the miracle repair. One thing I was adjusting or I was working on was the cooling
The cooling.
because I'm getting ahead of myself, but I was adjusting the cooling while I was driving. Noticed it was getting hot on race day, which was
Yeah.
a result of my crash, unfortunately.
Oh, really? Oh, I see. Yeah, that's so then you were practicing. You were doing a practice run, right? This is a few days before the race or something when you
Yes,
when you had when
yes.
you had the crash?
We, we took the car. The first time I drove it was at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca about 2 or 3 weeks before the hill climb. And it was fantastic. We set the record on my very first lap. We set the electric car record there and made some adjustments. It only got better. It handled so well. It was great. Then we go to Pikes Peak and you practice 1/3 at a time for 3 days. Okay. So you're only doing a little section early in the morning. And on the first day, that's qualifying. Well, we qualified really well. We were first in our class exhibition. There were 3 Teslas in the class and a bunch of other weird, exotic, crazy stuff. There was a 1,200 horsepower diesel truck. There was the wildest Datsun 240Z you ever saw with I can't remember what the engine was, turbocharged V8 or something. And they run crazy cars at Pikes Peak because the rules are wide open. You can build an amazing car. Blake Fuller was there in a pretty much stock Tesla that he'd driven there. I remember it being loaded to the roof with all of his gear.
Yes.
Whereas our Tesla stock drivetrain, but we had, lightweight and all that unplugged stuff. And
Was
day
it
one,
like a few 100 pounds difference?
oh gosh, yes,
Yeah.
500,
Wow, that many.
500,
Okay, that's a
600
lot.
pounds, a
So you guys
lot.
shaved a lot of power off of that car.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, a
Okay,
lot.
good.
Although we did bolt a roll cage back in it. Well, everybody has to have a roll cage, so of
Yeah.
course. But anyway, on day one, we qualified first. The car was perfect. So much fun. We were all excited. On day two, now that was on the bottom section. The bottom section is pretty smooth. Day two was the top section. Well, the top section freezes every winter and the road is rough. But I've run there before. I know how it is. Well, on the very first run, I got in big trouble in a corner called Bottomless Pit. And they call it that because, well, if you go off the road, it's a long, long way, almost straight down. It's on this mountain ridge I was talking about. And Bottomless Pit, you're on the crest of the ridge.
Oh wow.
And there was a big bump. And I knew it. I'd heard about it from my friends who'd run there the day before. They were practicing the top section. And I come down there and it's really cold that morning. And I have all my excuses, hit this bump and the car leaps sideways like boom, wow. And it had never even hinted at that at Laguna or on day one. It did not like that bump. Tires were cold. Steering got kind of stiff because I had it in sport mode, and I normally run comfort mode because in comfort mode it's light and I can steer so fast. But the car had been handling so well, I thought I'd rather have the feel in the sport mode. Well, you can't steer as fast. It doesn't have as much assist. So what I could correct, but I couldn't get it back. You know what I did? I got wide and I banged that wall that keeps you out of the bottomless pit. So I'm glad for the wall because a lot of the track, there are no walls.
Wow.
But I hit it hard and I went off the road and hit the nose in the ditch and just broke everything underneath the car. It was, I still feel terrible when I think about it. The guilt, right? Oh, you guys, I'm so sorry. I wrecked your beautiful car. And we were in a good shape. We were going to win that thing. But, you know, you got to get to race day and get to the finish line. And now the car is really, really wrecked. All four corners of suspension. The body didn't look too bad, but underneath. But then Ben Schaefer decided, you know, I don't want it to end here. It was only Tuesday. The race is on Sunday. So we got several days. Says it doesn't look good, but let me see. So we started looking at the car. There's a place in town called Anthony's, and I remember walking around underneath the car, and Ben is showing me everything that's broken. Yeah. Character builder, Yahoo! Character builder. Yes. Says, well, this is destroyed, and I mean, he didn't have to. I could see wheels were all just mashed, and suspension bent, and and then I got a call from a guy named Joe Brenner, who's at Porsche Colorado Springs. Guess what? They also sell Tesla, and Joe always is involved in Pikes Peak Hill Climb with Porsche. Porsche has their own class. They really like that event. There were 3 911 turbos running, GT2 RSs, Club Sports running. And Joe says, look, I got a Tesla shop. Do you guys need some help? He was like an angel, an angel of mercy coming down. And we put the car in his shop. And then Ben says, you know what? We might be able to fix this. And he bought another car, another Model 3 Performance, and we started swapping parts. Well, the team and the tech guys, Brian and Christian at the Tesla body shop that Joe Brenner hooked us up with, it was amazing. It was like a renaissance. It was like a rebirth. It was like a resurrection. The car was dead, and they were bringing it back to life. Because you have to run the same car. You're not allowed to change cars.
So it has to be the same chassis, the same main core of the car. Okay.
Yes. But you can change everything else. And we did.
Okay.
And we, by Saturday, it was running. It was a miracle. And on Sunday, we were on the start line. We made the race.
Yeah.
It was a miracle.
So they changed everything? Like the motor was from the newer car? And the battery was from the new car?
No, we didn't change the battery.
Oh, no, the battery. What? That's so weird. Because you would want a fresh battery. But maybe not, because you've tested that one battery. I mean, batteries, you think they're identical, but they're not identical. That
is exactly what we were thinking. You're exactly right, Yehu. I wish you'd been there. Yes. But we had some help. We had a couple guys from Tesla. And they checked the battery out as, plugged into their machine, and it said it was good.
It was good.
And then we tested it, and the car ran strong, but it did give us the heat warning, even in the test. But when I was testing it, Joe Brenner set us up with a little airport where I could run around basically the taxiway. And I drove it as hard as I could, but it was like a figure 8. I'd do a hairpin and then get up to about 60 or 70 miles an hour, and then a hairpin. And so we weren't going all that fast. And I theorized, look, we're not going that fast. Maybe that's why it seems a little sensitive. Yeah. Regardless, we were out of guesses. So we took it to the start line, started the race. And in the race, the car showed a heat warning after just a minute or two, and it's an 11-minute run.
Yeah.
So it showed a heat warning. I turned on the cooling as much as it could run, and the car slowed way down. We got like half power.
Oh, wow.
And turns out, yes, there was some battery damage. It was not, you couldn't see it in the test.
Ah, I see.
So, if we could go back and do it over, we'd change the battery too.
You place a brand new battery in there because the
Yeah,
car that you bought was brand new, right?
yes.
0 miles. Yeah.
I don't
See,
know if it was 0 miles, but it was pretty darn new.
pretty new. Yeah. Okay.
The
Yeah. So
commitment, the commitment to buy a whole nother car.
yeah, that's
And Ben Schaefer, it's in the middle of COVID and everything, and he's like, this world needs a better story than that. We don't want to leave here, having wrecked and gone home with a tail between our legs.
yeah.
We're getting back at it.
Yeah, that's a much better story. Let me tell you. Yeah, it's
That's the kind of guy Ben is.
resurrected from the dead in 4 days,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So Tesla was key in there, right? Because it's hard to swap parts. They have this encryption code thing, the technology that you can't just
Yes.
change batteries and motors and stuff. And so you needed some help from them to get it, and they were gracious enough to help you guys, right? So
Yes. A couple of
that's
guys
pretty
came
crazy.
down from Denver. Yeah, and they helped line us up with the car. Ben had to buy it, but just finding one.
Yeah.
I mean, that car probably showed up. I think it showed up on Thursday. And so the guys stayed straight through 48 hours, changing everything.
Everything.
And you're right, it's a big deal. The whole subframe comes down, and they had these tables. I forget what they call them. They roll them under the car, and it's a jig that holds everything. And you lower it down, and then they set it aside and go get the one from the other car. And I mean, it was a massive operation. It really
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, I think most people don't get how many parts, how many connectors, wires, hoses are in cars, right? So they think like, oh, how hard can it be to just swap the suspension? It's a major undertaking. There's thousands of bolts and it's crazy. Any car, even like simple ones like these, 50-year-old cars. It's like how hard can it be to swap this whole system? Oh yeah, 2 weeks later you're still underneath the car, just changing the wires and yeah, they're incredibly complex machines, and that people don't realize. And so, yeah, when you're trying to do it on the fly, yeah, it takes a big team, right? There's probably several guys that were working at the same time.
Yes. Oh, you know it.
Yeah,
I mean, the Unplugged Performance team was there, and we had probably 4 mechanics on the team, and then the Brian and Christian from the Tesla shop in Colorado Springs, and then the Tesla community kind of came together. A guy named Sof Fraval, SOF, Sof. He's big in the Tesla world, and people were offering help, and they actually brought us lunch a couple of times. And I mean, it was amazing because the Tesla community is pretty tightly knit,
yeah,
and there's a lot of love there, and
yeah.
we got a lot of support.
Yeah,
And
we're almost like trying to prove to the world that this is the future, right? Because there's a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of people that are like, you guys are crazy with your electric. They're too expensive. They're too slow. They're
Yeah.
worse for the environment. I mean, you name it. Whatever angle they could attack the thing and be like, you guys are crazy, huh? And so I think we feel that like, oh, yeah, we're going to show you, And so whenever we see someone trying to break a record or to do a thing or go faster or longer or whatever or in more style, we're kind of behind that. We're like, yeah, let's help this thing, because one of the other teams, right, that was running that's raised like Blake, like that's a crowdsource thing, right? I mean, they all bought this Tesla, they all pitched in, and they got him to go up there, right? And so. Yeah, it's you could see that the community's on board. It's behind it. It's us against the world kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've found, for me, they're not different to drive. It's a one gear, so
One
there's
gear.
no shifting. but it's a car, and I go drive it through the corners and get on the power, and I get many times I get the question, is it hard to drive without the sound, the sound of the engine? And I actually love the way gasoline engines sound,
Yeah.
but I don't find the car hard to drive at all. I don't. It
So
still brakes and turning and feeling the G-force, and
the
I don't
feedback
know
is
why
different,
people.
right? Because you can hear what the engine is doing, but on this one you can feel what the engine is doing because now you feel the forces, you feel the grip, you feel the vibration, you feel the stuff. How? Yeah, is that different? Like it's intuitive, or like do you have to actually take a while to figure the new way of the different feedback that you're getting now from the car?
For me, it was not different.
It's not different.
I
Wow.
mean, there is noise. There's wind noise. There's a lot of noise from the tires throwing rocks against the body. You hear things you don't hear over the exhaust of a loud track car.
Yeah.
But I don't find that to be a factor at all. I know what the torque is, and I feel the forces, and I just drive. And the sounds are different, but they still, the sound varies, but it's more the wind noise. A little
Yeah.
bit of drivetrain, but not much.
Yeah, a little bit windy. The gears you kind of hear
A
them a
little
little bit,
bit.
but yeah.
Yeah.
How about
I
the
don't
fact
find it.
that you only have one gear, right? Because I mean, when you have another car, you're usually driving. You're not driving, automatics, right? You're shifting gears, right? And so that takes some brain power away from the target, right? Which is to take this corner the fastest or whatever. And so you have to now dedicate some brain power to like, oh, am I at the right, where am I on the bandwidth, right? The torque bandwidth. There's almost none of that when these ones, right? Because these it's just single gear, and then whatever you have, whatever you have. There's nothing you can do about changing the gear ratios and stuff.
Very sharp. You're right. Shifting is a big part of track driving, and it does take some of that bandwidth, some of the mental focus, especially manual shifts where you've got a clutch, move the lever, and do all that perfectly smoothly. Fact is, most professional racing cars now don't have a manual shift anymore. They don't have an H pattern shifter
Oh
anymore.
no, okay, I didn't know that.
Almost none. They're paddle shifts,
Paddle shifts. Okay.
except the series like the Michelin series in IMSA that is still street based cars, but even them, more and more, they have paddle shift automatics, right?
And so you don't need a clutch. You just tell it when to shift, and it automatically just changes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The high dollar real race cars, no clutch anymore.
Ah,
You
okay.
just pull a lever. And it's so easy because now they're smart enough that if you pull the lever at the wrong time, it won't shift.
Until
And
it synchronizes and it does the
until the
thing. Yeah.
speed gets right and it knows it's okay.
Okay.
But just a few years ago with a manual shifter, you better do it at the right time. If you
Yeah.
don't, you can over rev the engine. You can lock the wheels and spin yourself out. That's the quickest way to crash a car is a bad downshift. Say you're going from
Yes.
fourth to third and you go from fourth to first.
Yeah.
Oh man, you don't want to talk to your crew chief after that. And now in a Tesla, one gear, you don't have to deal with any of that. And you can focus better on braking and turning. It's
Yeah.
actually easier. It's a lot easier. That's actually my favorite thing about electric cars on the street.
Yeah.
Say you're in traffic and you're driving along, traffic's kind of heavy, and you want to turn right pretty soon. You're in the left lane and you see a hole. You're like, oh, I want to get up. I'm going to get into that hole so I can make my exit. You don't have to shift. You don't have to
Yeah.
kick down with an automatic. You just squeeze that pedal forward and zoop, you're
Yeah.
there. You are
Yeah.
there. And
You know what I've
it's
noticed?
amazing.
There's no slip too, because like an automatics, you you press on that accelerator and the car doesn't always respond the same way because there's a lot of slip depending on where you are in the RPM or in the bandwidth or the power bandwidth. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening, but that response is not linear, to what you want it to happen. So
Yes.
on this ones, it's like you always tell it, it always does the same thing. It goes because there's no
Yes.
slip in that drivetrain. Yeah, it's a crazy thing.
You're exactly right. The electric cars, they make downshifts feel so archaic, like dinosaur, right? You're in an automatic or a manual, and you see that little hole, and you want to get into that in a hurry. Well, you got a downshift probably, and it's like boom, wah, it just goes nuts. All this stuff, instead of just
you just go.
It's like you're on Star Trek, and the car just beams you into that spot.
Yeah.
As opposed to all these histrionics, I love the word you said, linear. The electric is very linear. You get exactly what you asked for. Whereas with an automatic or a manual, you've got to kick the engine down, get the revs up, and the power changes dramatically. And there's all this drama that goes on, and it's decidedly unlinear, right? That's my favorite thing about driving an electric car in traffic. And it actually makes it easier on track, too.
On track. So, I mean, there's a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of people that hate that because they're like, that's not driving, The racing is all about shifting gears. And it's true for some people might be, right? But if you want to go fast, right, you can do it in an electric system much easier, right? Because it's performance. If you're after performance, you have to kind of give it to this new system. Now, if you're into experiencing the sounds and the shifting and the, all the mental gymnastics or the, whatever the work that it is to get a combustion car down a corner or whatever, then you're right. You can appreciate that for what it is, but you're not going to hit. I think moving forward, all the new records are going to start being set by electric cars, right? I think
it's possible. It really is. And I talked about this sport of autocross, which is where I started, running a kind of a slalom ski type course in a big open parking lot or airport runway. That sport is still a big deal, bigger than ever. They now have events where you can win $15,000 or $20,000 for first place.
Wow!
And guess what? Teslas are really good at that. And part of the reason is that one gear. The torque and the low center of gravity. And these Teslas that look like kind of simple, plain cars you'd see in a parking lot somewhere, they're racing against these Corvettes and Ferraris and things. And you just, wow, how is that plain old Tesla keeping up with this wildly modified Corvette? And it's the electricity has its real advantages, the torque and the one gear. And the traction of having that instant torque makes it fast, even in these kinds of events. So you're on the right track. Electric is coming. And as batteries improve, and the way that we've seen how easily Lucid and Tesla can say, oh, I want 1,200 horsepower to set a new record. Boom, they got it. Wow. It's impressive. I mean, I'm still learning how good it is. I'm hoping I get some of that this year because guess what? Unplugged Performance and I are going back to Pikes Peak. Same car. We're going back.
Same car. Okay. New battery, though.
Somebody
hopefully
finds that little dial. You always want more power.
Yeah. Hopefully. So you guys are probably changing that battery, right?
Yep. Yeah. I think that's on schedule.
Yeah. So by the way, that battery, I'm a battery geek. That's what I do here. We do DIY battery projects, power walls in the car. My car has had a Tesla battery from the Roadster, the original Roadster era. So this is a 2008 cells, a build in 2009, and they've been there. So they're almost 10-year-old cells. So they're for people that say that lithium batteries are not going to last a long time. What are you talking about? I've been driving around this thing forever, almost 10 years now. So the Model 3 battery, I mean, that's a work of art. That is by far the most advanced battery pack that has been designed. It's got some crazy things. It's got the latest, form factor. It's got this goo. It's like a rubberized compound that they put in this pack. And that serves as a shock absorber, thermal management thing, and then also it's a flame retardant, so that the batteries are ever in a crash or for some reason, systems fail all the time, right? Like there's nothing 100% safe. There's a ton of energy in that battery pack. That it's hopefully going to stop a runaway. They call them runaway events where one cell catches fire and then that cell makes the other one catch fire because it's in
Yes.
such close proximity. So we haven't seen, I think, that I can recall, we haven't seen a single Model 3 fire yet in the wild. Where the Model S's we did at the early days, we saw one here, one there. You know, it was like an accident would happen, and then the battery would catch fire and stuff. You know,
Yes.
so that's a pretty advanced battery that you drove up that hill there.
Tell you what,
And
I slammed that wall. I'm amazed it worked at all. We hit
yes,
hard.
so it survived physically. It didn't
Yes.
show any signs of damage, but maybe there
Right.
was. Yeah, because the cooling
Many
system's
times.
also pretty advanced. So to tell you, there's like I think there's like almost 5,000 cells in this pack, right? So it's individual little cylindrical cells, and the cooling
Wow.
system goes through every single one of them. It touches every single one of these cells. It's like a squared aluminum tubing that zigzags in between every single cell, and it runs cooling through it, and it cools every cell, right? So who
Wow.
knows what the problem was in that battery pack, but it would be interesting to take it apart and see it, even though it's really hard because it has that compound. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, so you think next year is the year that because you didn't uh I mean you made the race, but you didn't break any records or you didn't win that race in those classes, right?
It was so close.
It was close.
So close. It was early in the run. I realized we didn't have the power.
Okay.
And now I was just hoping we make it to the top. And it stayed. The car is rated at about 450 horsepower. And I think we had down around 200.
Yeah,
So
so
on the
50%.
straightaways, it felt so slow. I mean, in the video on my YouTube channel, I'm going like, "Come on!" You can
Ah.
hear me say this out loud, and we
So
get
that's where
up
you
there.
lost most of the time. It was on the straightaways where you couldn't get the
Yes,
speed.
yes, because it
Yeah.
still handled the same, handled great,
Yeah.
but really slow on the straightaways. And we get up top, and Blake is already finished, and he and I compare times. He is 1.3 seconds faster
Wow. Okay. So it's
after
tight.
all of that. And our car should have been much, much faster. We're
Yeah.
far lighter. We had all
Lighter.
these modifications. It was a race car, and but Blake's car was full power,
Yeah.
and
Essentially
he
stock.
beat
I
me by 1.3 seconds.
I did. I don't know. Did he do? Because I know I talked to him about his previous race, and he did quite a bit of, creative things to keep the car cool, like putting like ice on the battery, all stuff that didn't require him to modify. Because his thing is like, I want to race a stock thing up the mountain and see how it does. I mean, putting ice on it is not, it's modifying the car. You're just doing
Yeah,
some creative cooling, right?
right.
Did he? I don't know if he did this on this race or not. Did he? He sort
I
of did
don't
those sort
know.
of tricks. Yeah. Okay.
Don't
I gotta
know, but
talk to him about that.
he ran a Model 3 this year,
Model 3. Yeah.
and so I don't know exactly what he did, but he ran good, and he ran all the way to the top.
Yeah. And he
He
got
moved
both of
up.
those classes, right?
Sorry.
I think he got first place in two classes or something. In the
Yes.
two classes that you guys ran. Yeah.
He won the class, the exhibition class. He won.
Ex-
So when we compared times, I was not happy because I'm like, oh, we didn't have much power, and I don't. Yeah, I figured we'd be 2 minutes behind, but no, it was
It
really
was
close.
close.
We almost got, and then I'm like, oh, but then Blake, on the other hand, is just so happy, and he's the greatest guy, and he's jumping up and down, and he gives me this big hug, and I'm like, yeah, I'm happy for you, man. I'm like, oh, we almost won. Ah.
Yeah.
So you be nice, and then plus I know it's on my shoulders. I'm the one who crashed the car. It was on a practice run. Come on. But I thought I'd slowed down enough, right? And no, it jumped out like crazy. But anyhow, it was what we left there with was a great comeback. We finished second, and potential, so much potential to go far faster. And that's part of why Ben Schaefer and Unplugged are coming back this year. We're going to realize that potential.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what's the future? You think you'll be doing? So you're doing definitely next year. Uh,
Yeah.
will you be doing any more events in electric? You think? Because I don't know. I mean, this year was kind of weird because of COVID, right?
Yeah, weird.
Even Pikes Peak was probably kind of weird because there's no spectators, right? It
No
was just you
spectators.
guys up there.
Very weird.
Yeah.
Usually the road is lined with people.
Yeah.
True. And the race was also delayed a couple of months.
A couple of
Race happened in
months.
late August, whereas it
Yes.
usually happens in around the 4th of July or late June, right around my birthday. This year it's going to be June 27th. This
June
is
twenty
scheduled.
seventh. Okay.
Yeah. So I am open to electric car events. I will probably go to some Tesla Corsa events to test our race car and just hang out with the guys and have a good time. Otherwise, I don't know. We'll just see what crops up.
Yeah. Well, there's some new models coming out. I think the generally speaking, I think all the manufacturers are finally getting on board with this, and they're getting some models up there that are going to be compelling and stuff. And so, yeah,
True.
I think it's going to be good for electric cars and
Yes.
beating records. You know, Michael Bream, I was talking to you about him, EV West. They just got a record on a land speed record. So
Oh,
they took a Tesla Model S motor system, and they built a like a rail car, you know, that one of those long ones,
Dreamliner.
the Streamliner.
Yes.
And yeah, on their first run, they set a record. I mean, this is on the practice run essentially because they were like, oh, you know, they did the qualification. The guy that was behind the wheel didn't. I don't know what the problem was, but he wasn't following the rules, and he just opened it up, and they almost got in trouble. They almost got disqualified over there. But then they
Oh,
put somebody else on the wheel, and on the first run, they beat that record or whatever. So
that
yeah,
sounds like
it's
Bonneville, right? Was
on
that at
Bottomville. Yeah,
Salt
Bottomville.
Flats?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and so now I think now this is their first car. This is their first attempt. So they're figuring everything out. So they thought like, okay, the real record is coming next year when we take it back because we were,
Ah,
you know, just figuring everything out. I mean, they didn't even have the right driver behind the wheel this year, right? So I think this is pretty exciting. I think for electrics because they're now right now is when they're going to be setting a lot of these records now.
well, you've reminded me. I have more electric experience. I hot lapped something called a Genovation GXE. Have you heard the Genovation?
No.
It's made out of a Corvette.
Ah,
It's a
okay.
C7 Corvette, full electric drivetrain, two-wheel drive.
Two
And
wheel.
it's interesting also because they kept the transmission.
Okay.
So you can use gears.
Yeah.
And it that car, they took it to Kennedy Space Center where they're not running shuttles anymore, right? There's a 5 mile long runway there, and they use it for speed runs.
Oh wow.
I forget what they call it. There's a man in charge of it, and it's named after him. And they got that GXE Genovation to 200 miles an hour plus.
Ooh,
I
yeah.
forget the exact number, but it was over 200 miles an hour on electric power
Yeah.
from in a Corvette chassis.
Yeah.
And then I hot lapped it up at Thunder Hill Raceway, and we set the electric record there. It was really cool. And the same thing, that huge electric torque. And they had active aero on it, and it's pretty amazing car. And they built it themselves. A
Yeah.
Genovation GXE. Looks like a
GXC.
Corvette.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, let's start setting records on there. Yeah. And so the cool
Ah,
thing about these custom builds is that you probably won't have the cooling problems with these because now you can put a giant, you know, full size cooling system, you know, like a heat exchanger and, you know, whatever, you know, air, you know, fans or whatever, you know. So I think that's what they did. I think it didn't play that big a role, the cooling on a straight line
yeah.
at this event. So I think next year is gonna be pretty exciting or this year. Yeah, we're in the new year already for electric. So I can't
Wow.
I can't wait to see you compete again and set a new record. And maybe we can have you back and talk about that one because it's pretty exciting. And we're behind you because you're obviously EV friendly, and yeah, we're we're down with all that.
Hey, I'm up for anything fast.
There you go, right? It's every time I see a car that goes by me and makes loud noises, I'm like, all right, so we know your car grunts. But can it go fast, you know?
My electric car is silently waiting to murder you from 0 to 60.
Or famously, Jay Leno said that horsepower sells cars, but torque wins races, right? That's what he said, I
Yes,
think.
torque wins races.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we hope we win some more races in electrics, and we'll be rooting for you. I want to thank you for coming and spending time with me and talking about this.
My pleasure, Yehu. Thank you so much. Hi to all the electric car fans out there.
Yeah, do you want to plug any of your socials? Do you have a social media accounts that people should follow you in? And
yes, sir. Thank you very much. It's Randy Pobst, RANDY, POB as in boy, ST. And that's on Instagram, on YouTube channel, and Facebook and Twitter.
And Twitter. There you go. You're in all the platforms.
Post, because there aren't any other ones.
Yeah, it's like my name.
Yeah.
Jehu. It's a weird one. They're like, yeah, nobody forgets my name, you know?
Yeah. There's no R. It's not like pro. It's Pobst. Pabst beer with an O. And thank you for that. Yeah, I do Instagram every day with all kind of cars.
Yeah.
It's good fun. Good fun.
Yes. So all the people, I keep getting more and more people that are interested in racing because I'm having a lot of race car drivers on the podcast and stuff. And so go follow Randy on all his social medias. And yeah, we'll stay tuned for next year's. Maybe we could make it out there. I want to go see this race in person because it's not the same, right? It's so terrible. That race is so poorly covered. There's almost no coverage about it. It's like we don't even know, right? You have to be like a hardcore race enthusiast or fan to know and see and watch. Yes. But I mean, I remember when this year when the news came out that you crashed, I thought like, oh, let me look around, and I was like checking the internets, trying to find more info, and I'm like, no, come on, nobody's up there like having a live thing. Maybe we could do that next year, go and cover it, so that we can get more fans excited about it. It's pretty cool. So, and
the Motor Trend did a show about it that came out very recently. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I haven't catch that one.
Trend channel and find the trailer on the edge. Motor Trend at Pikes Peak.
Motor Trend at Pikes Peak. Oh, okay. There we go. We can go and watch that now. All right, Randy. Thank you. I can't appreciate you enough. We'll have you again in the future, okay?
Yeah, let's do, Jehu. I enjoyed it. I want to try your bug and your wagon.
Oh yeah, when you're
Is that
down
your bug back there behind you?
Yeah, I have a bunch of them. I have a little warehouse here where my dream. So here's my dream. I know my listeners are going to,
great.
You know, they're gonna say that I'm a broken record. I'm actually converting a whole fleet of these guys, the Volkswagen buses, right? And I want to take them to Hawaii so I can rent them over there because I love the islands. I just don't love renting a gas car and going around, go see the waterfalls. But this thing would be pretty amazing. And so I'm like, that's my dream. I'm like, I'm going to convert a full fleet, ship them over, then rent them to people. That's the other thing. Converting a classic car to electric, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. So most people are never able to drive an old classic converted to electric, right? That's almost like a rich man's game, you know? And so I'm like, well, if I'd rent them, anybody could experience this.
That's a great idea. I'm in. Yeah. I want one.
There you go. When I'm ready, we'll have you. Take one of these around the corners in Hawaii.
Make some dune buggies while you're at it.
Yeah, the dune. So yeah, Maui has a lot of like off-road territory. They have a whole side of the island that it's dry, and there's a lot of off-roading stuff. Yeah, you never know. We might start a new race.
I was just there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Maui in a rented Jeep off-road. I paid
off-road. Okay,
that off-road.
There
think
you go. Yeah,
do it.
imagine that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, there we go. Let's do it. So I'll let you know when I'm done, and then we can have you out there. But yeah, next time you're in Southern California, let me know. We're here. We can give you the tour and have you drive one of these cars because they're fun.
I love it.
All right.
I'll do
All
a
right,
show
Randy.
On my channel.
There you go. Yeah. All right, Randy. Thank you. And we'll see you next time.